Hey gang, before we get started on this week's show, I wanted to apologize because this is a couple of weeks in the can. Brian and Isaac recorded this on the 17th uh, while Mrs. Rant Mode on and I were out of town. And I've had a lot of things coming up, being the fact that I'm the guy that edits the videos. I've had some personal stuff. We'll leave it at that. Nothing's wrong. It's all good. I just wanted to apologize for the delay. This is a great show from Brian and Isaac. They talk about Big E winning the title, and then there's one of our GOAT discussions. And this week, it's on Trish Stratus, and it's a hell of a discussion, and I'm pissed off that I missed it. We will be back this week. Enjoy.
Best friends. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the lean, mean, wrestle-talking machine that is Wrestling with Egos. It's your boy, the intellectual savior of the wrestling masses, Brian. I am joined this week by the big Don of Wrestling with Egos, Isaac. How's it going, my brother?
I'm doing well. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. They said, "Hey, Brian, you want the day off because it's your birthday?" And I said, "No, we can get that work in, even though the Reverend of the Rant is not here with tonight. That's fine. We still got a little content to put on your television screens. As ever, we want to thank you for joining us, however you're joining us, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Anchor Podcasts, and there's a whole bunch of other platforms that we're on now all of a sudden. Apparently, we're on Spotify. Apparently, we are on Google Podcasts, and there's a couple other ones, some other ones that I've never heard of before, but however you're consuming our content, we really do appreciate it. We've got a great show lined up for you this evening. A small part topical and a big part GOAT discussion. So Isaac, my brother, let's get right into it, because this past Monday on Raw, Big E called his shot. He tweeted out during the day on Monday, I believe it was, "Let's let this cat out of the bag. Tonight on Raw, I'm cashing in." And the main event was Bobby Lashley successfully defending his championship against Randall Keith Orton in a hard-fought match. But then when Lashley was recovering in the ring, Big E's music hit, the crowd went mental. And after about a 3-minute or so cash-in attempt, Big E successfully became the new WWE champion. And as you can all predict, the first two people out to congratulate him were his New Day brethren, Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston. Your thoughts on this momentous achievement? And a bonus question for you: who is Big E's first title defense going to be against?
Okay. First off, congratulations to Biggie. Number one, he deserves it. Number two, it's been a long time coming for him being in the shadows. I'm going all the way back to when he was, with Dolph, and backing him up. And then going with the New Day, and the New Day, Kofi, Xavier, E. They turned anything they did into not just gold, but platinum. And they were fantastic. And they are. And they're so entertaining. And they're so funny. They're so athletic. We can go into that. Not even gonna argue that point. I'm happy for him. It's long overdue. I think that your question being answered is Bobby Lashley is going to be the first person that's going to face him. And then that brings up a small little side discussion of, are they going to bring back the Hurt Business? They said, well, Bobby Lashley could have probably defended his title if he had a little help. We said this on previous episodes before. They were too early to pull the plug on the Hurt Business. I thought that could have been the next big faction, like the Horsemen. And Will they put it back together? Yet to be seen. Would I like to see it? Actually, I would. Kind of like to see it. Will it happen? Well, we just gotta play our cards and see how it goes. That's all I'm saying. So that's where I'm at with that.
I tend to agree with you on Lashley being the first defense because of the rematch clause, but I wonder. I remember them saying they were getting away from that sort of thing, where okay, you lose the champion, you lose the title, you get an automatic rematch. Maybe Lashley gets some time off and he refocuses. I wouldn't mind seeing him reform the Hurt Business, but I'm not. You know me, Isaac. I'm not a fan of the way it seems like every major champion, unless I missed my guess, you got Roman Reigns with the Bloodline, you've got Kenny Omega with the Elite. It seems like the go-to method for a heel to retain his championship is to put 17 guys around him. You know, maybe not so much with Roman. It's really just the Usos and Paul Heyman, pulling the puppet strings from behind. But especially with Kenny, I mean, he called me this week and asked me if I wanted to join the Elite to just go out and take a pounding so that Bryan Danielson didn't get to him. I told him I was busy. I told him I had a podcast to run.
Well, you are busy, and it is your birthday, by the way, and congrats. I hope that you had a wonderful day. I'm sorry. Quick side note. Just wanted to just put that out there, people.
That's okay. Many thanks. But I just, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about WWE, especially through history. You got Triple H with the corporation, and you got JBL had his cabinet, and I'm sure I come up with more, but it's just like I get kind of tired of seeing the same storyline with all these variations of I've got a guy here, and I'm going to put 12 other guys around him to make it that much harder for the opposition to go through you. And I just wonder what's wrong with one-on-one, and who cares if you hot potato the championship a little bit? If I'm getting good matches out of it, you know me, that's all I've ever cared about.
Let me jump in real quick.
Sure.
They've done that from the beginning. They've done that from the beginning of time. And we sit here and we talk about these guys.
Yes.
All day long. And that's exactly what. Now, we all know Ric Flair is one of the greatest of all time. Now, I know that we're saying some stuff right now. We're seeing some stuff that on Dark Side of the Ring where Rick was being Rick and doing some stuff that completely inappropriate. That's for another time in another place. We'll bring that up later, boys and girls. Don't think we're dodging it. But we all know Ric Flair can go 60 minutes plus every single night and tear the house down. But he was also notorious for having the Horsemen jump in every single match. And that's been the blueprint. Thanks, Four Horsemen. And that's what the blueprint is still going to be for the rest of eternity. I hate to sit here and say it, but until, you only have maybe one or two people that you can sit here and say have stood alone. Stone Cold Steve Austin being one of them, going up against the Hart Foundation, going up against DX, going up against the Nation of Domination. That's just what it's always been. Will they change it? Someone's got to take the risk and say, I'm just going to go out here and do what I do without having 75 people jump in on every match. I hope they get away from that. I mean, that's been going for 40 plus years.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I guess I didn't realize that, as long as wrestling's been a thing, there have been factions and there have been other guys stepping in to take the lumps so that the champion doesn't have to, or that the top guy doesn't have to. I understand that's all part of the work. As far as who I think he could have great matches with, I mean, the list is endless. And a name that just popped into my head, and I don't know if they would do it because he's still part of a tag team that's very over and very entertaining. I would love to see Big E and Riddle. I feel like that could be very interesting. But again, you could argue it's babyface versus babyface, and they really wouldn't do that sort of thing.
But they've done it before.
They have.
And I think if it's a really good matchup, then they'll do it. And I'm gonna go back. I've been thinking about this for a while, and this is this is at the time it was Lance Storm versus Rob Van Dam.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them were baby faces, but the problem of it was both of them could go. They were familiar with each other. They had 1,001 matches together.
Right.
And look, it was done on Sunday Night Heat, and they redid it again like 2 weeks later on Monday Night Raw because it was just that good, and they had such great chemistry. So, is it possible? Yes. Will it happen? Let's find out.
And
But
honestly, I would need to have the Raw roster in front of me. I'm so out of touch on Monday Night Raw, it's not even funny. I mean, I tuned in Monday night to watch it happen, out of respect for Big E, because he had said, "Here's what I'm doing. I'm gonna make this work," and and I loved the humility that he showed in all of the post match interviews that he did, whether it was that night or the following day on the bump. He was just a very humble champion as far as I could tell, and he was quick to give props to all the people that helped him get there. And I loved on social media how, to a man, everybody was praising him. Yeah, and him not. It's impossible for him to overstate the influence Luke Harper, Mr. Brody Lee had on his career. You saw Bray's tweet, the kind of man the boys line up to congratulate. That gave me chills. It's richly deserved. And I wonder, and another thought that came into the back of my head. So take a walk with me, if you will. Who wants to walk with Brian?
who wants to storm with Brian Bebe?
Yeah. So Kofi's been a champion, right?
Yes.
And tons of emotion and stuff like that. And now Big E's been the champion.
Right.
If there was ever a time for Xavier Woods to turn heel, think about that kind of a story.
We touched base on this when Kofi won the title at WrestleMania. And yes, it would be the perfect time for Kofi to turn heel. I don't know.
Not Kofi.
I'm sorry.
Xavier.
Xavier. I'm sorry about that.
That's
Would it
okay.
be the perfect time for him to do it? Yeah, because the storyline of, you guys can be world champion, but I can't be world champion.
Because he would be coming in it from a point of bitterness, from a point of jealousy, from a point of when's it my turn, kind of like I'm gonna forget her character name. Jeez. Gypsy Rose Lee's mom in the musical Gypsy. When's it my turn? That kind of thing. Living vicariously through her daughter, that kind of thing. Xavier Woods could totally pull something like that off. I'm not saying Bette Midler's character from that, but he's sat by and he's been the good soldier. He's supported, whatever that means and whatever was needed at the time. And through a combination of factors, poor timing, injuries, other people getting pushes and stuff like that, Woods has never really had his moment in the sun. Woods has always had to pursue other avenues to get his laurels and whatnot. Think about how heartbreaking that would be if those were the depths he had to sink to potentially ruin a friendship, kayfabe ruin a friendship anyway. That's why I'm 75 to 80% convinced it won't go down like that, because probably the real life friendship would supersede anything that they could do on TV and storylines, would be my guess.
Let me jump in here real quick and also say I think that could ruin a lot of things that he has going on right now with saying up, up, down, down. That could destroy up, up. I mean, he's made that into something huge.
Yep.
And it's fun and entertaining and something different. And I think that that's something that he really wants to focus on. Now, if they decide, the WWE, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that, Vince McMahon decides he wants to go down that route, he has the right to do that. Would that destroy everything that he has going and mess him up just like everybody else? Probably. Would it be best for business? I don't think so because
It's a very thin line you'd be walking, which is why I don't think it would happen. I mean, the question of who's got stroke in that company is more nebulous than it's ever been. I'd like to think that those three men have earned at least some sort of stroke when it comes to the writers and when it comes to Vince and things like that. With as many barriers as they've broken through and as many marquee spots they've found themselves in, I know there's a story to tell there, but I think if they were to go to the powers that be and say, you know what, we're really just uncomfortable doing this and here's why, let's come up with something else, I'd like to think that they would at least give them that much. So
here's my problem. Let's say they do that. And then they say, okay, well, you know what? This is what we want to do. And that's just going to be it and the story. And if you don't like it, guess what? We'll fire you too.
mm.
And because they are so quick
Petty, vindictive like that.
And I mean, as much as I don't want that to happen and don't want that to be, but they let go some guys that I thought they wouldn't let go at the time because of contract and money and some other stuff, and some other people they just don't give two flying craps about. Just saying, I don't know, but that could be. I know they got some stroke, but let's hope they stick together.
And thus brings the end of the evening, the topical part of the evening. I am excited, though, because I get to pull out this little prop. It's my goat that I bought last year and have only gotten to use a couple of times on the show because we keep forgetting about the GOAT discussion. And I thought, okay, it's going to be a two-man power trip tonight. It's a great time to bring out the GOAT because welcome to the next installment of the GOAT discussion. For the uninitiated, the GOAT discussion is when we put a wrestler or a tag team in certain cases under the microscope, and we give them a long look, and we say, are they worthy of consideration for the greatest of all time? And you'll say, well, wait a minute, guys, you haven't done a GOAT episode on Ric Flair yet. You haven't done a GOAT episode on The Rock yet. You haven't done a GOAT episode on Bret the Hitman Hart yet.
Duh.
And that's why. I mean, they are universally considered to be one of the greatest of all time, and in some cases the greatest of all time. But like we did with Jericho, like we did with Eddie Guerrero, like we did with Kurt Angle, like we did with some other people whose names escape me right now, it's guys and girls you might have forgotten about. And when you look at it in great detail, like we're about to do, you realize, you know what? They are one of the greatest of all time as well. And there's a graphic that is coming up on the screen shortly here that talks about our criteria. And there are 6 parts to this discussion. We focused on career longevity. Basically, were you in your promotion for a long time, or were you just there for a cup of coffee and you were just a blip on the radar? That's why Simon Dean is not part of the greatest of all time conversation, much to my chagrin.
We will not get to Simon Dean today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I know you guys are all sitting here like, I'm waiting for this one. I'm so waiting, but please.
Thinking about 2048 is when his greatest of all time episode is slated to record. So tune back in then, boys and girls. We also talk about storyline relevance. Storyline relevance means did they figure prominently in angles that are on television, or were they just basically there to wrestle? We talk about mic skills. How are they on the microphone? Are they good communicators? Do they talk you into the building? We talk about the number of championships they've won. You know, did they win championships, or were they just there as enhancement talent, or to take up a spot so that somebody else could win?
Or a transitional champion.
Right. We also talk about overall health. Were they able to avoid injury? And we talk about Patrick's favorite category, the intangibles, that little extra something, that little extra good that you bring to the table as a professional wrestler. And for the first time in the history of wrestling with egos in our GOAT discussion, we're going to take a look at a women's wrestler tonight. And that women's wrestler is one Trish Stratus, hailing from Toronto, Canada. She is a WWE Hall of Famer. She's a multi-time women's and divas champion. And we are going to dissect her career here and answer the question once and for all. Is she worthy of discussion as one of the greatest of all time? And we even have some insight from Patrick that he communicated to us earlier today when he figured out this is what we were doing tonight. So, Isaac, let me start it off with you. Just kind of an overall impression of her. You don't have to go too deeply into any one of those categories yet, because we'll unpack them here. But I say the name Trish Stratus to you. The first thing that pops into your head is what?
Multi-champion. First thing that keeps coming into mind for me is her wars with Lita. Her all the way going back to TNA with Test and Albert, leading herself into the women's division, and all of her accomplishments, and her being in the Hall of Fame.
That's a great place. That's a great jumping off point. We'll take a look at career longevity first. And in this column, I give her a yes, because she started off, I want to say late 99, maybe mid 99 as a valet for Test and Albert. And soon after that, she started taking bumps in the ring. She was famously put through a table by Bubba Ray Dudley on an episode of Raw. But then before you know it, you turn around and she's in the ring and she's competing in the women's division against people like Molly Holly and people like Tori, who was in D-Generation X. That Tori, not Tori Wilson, even though she did have a rivalry with her later on.
Right.
And the matches with Lita, and you know, she got to mix it up with Moolah and Mae Young towards the end there, and people like that. And she turned into, quite frankly, one of the best women's wrestlers of both the Attitude and Ruthless Aggression eras. I mean, there's no sugarcoating that. She was at it for 18 years, give or take. As you mentioned before, she is the WWE Hall of Famer, and so many wrestlers of today count her as an inspiration, whether it's Bayley or Sasha Banks or Deonna Purrazzo or, you know, insert name of current women's wrestler here. They all owe a huge debt of gratitude to Trish Stratus for paving the way.
Totally agree. Completely agree.
So from there, we're going to move on to storyline relevance. And this was the most surprising part of the research for me. Storyline relevance is she involved in major storylines, and not necessarily just title stories either, but is she in good feuds? And it's a resounding yes here, because you've already mentioned her rivalries with Lita. They were the first pair of women to ever main event an episode of Monday Night Raw. I believe that was in 2004, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was.
She's also had rivalries with Mickie James. We'll get to that one in a minute. The one where she opened my eyes, and I mentioned her transition from before to, you know, I'm starting off as just, I'm going to accompany the guys to the ring, and I'm going to distract the referee, and I'm going to distract the other members of the tag team and stuff like that. It was the angle she had with Stephanie at WrestleMania X7. You know, the whole, I'm having an affair with Vince and that sort of thing. We're going to put Linda McMahon in the sanatorium and all that kind of stuff. The match the two of them had at WrestleMania X7 that year, that's where it opened my eyes to, wow, she can really go in the ring. Whether that's because you're pairing her off with Stephanie, who's not really, we wouldn't really call her an accomplished women's wrestler necessarily, even though Stephanie put in that work too, just like Trish did. That was where I started seeing her do things like bulldog headlocks and the chick kick and stuff like that. And I really started realizing she is putting in this work to try and go from just accompaniment to, you're going to take me seriously in the ring. And some of these other rivalries she had, I forgot about a lot of them. She had a rivalry with Jazz. I mean, there was a lot of women of title matches she had against Jazz. Victoria, Gail Kim, and don't forget about Chris Jericho. They didn't really wrestle that much, but there was a rivalry involving Christian coming off of WrestleMania 20. Yeah, because it was Chris Jericho and Christian for the Intercontinental Championship, and Trish wound up costing Jericho that match and leaving with Christian in his creepy little bastard phase.
I keep thinking about something else that's relevant when it comes to Trish, and it was the kiss my ass portion with Mr. McMahon, which was extremely relevant. Which I thought they were getting close to crossing lines on certain things. But
yes, I remember that, and I remember being uncomfortable watching that, because I'm not going to sit here and say that I wasn't attracted to Trish Stratus. Trish Stratus is great to look at, don't get me wrong. That was the first time I can remember being kind of upset with Vince for the things that he was trying to get away with in the ring. And I know that's the point. Well, he's a heel and he's but you shouldn't be making. I'll go and address the elephant in the room, boys and girls. You shouldn't be making a woman get down on her hands and knees and crawl around the ring and bark like a dog. You just shouldn't be doing that. I don't care what area you're in. I don't care what you think is okay. We're just trying to get a laugh and get some heat and stuff like that. That's not okay. But and then you go from the Stephanie thing to a couple years later, now Mickie James is in the company, and that was a whole different kind of uncomfortable. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay, I'm ready.
Are you though? I mean, because the whole Mickie James thing caught me off guard too, because this is the point in time where I feel like they realize, we don't have a lot of worthy competitors for Lita and Trish, so we're kind of running Lita and Trish into the ground. So this is when you're doing the Diva Search things, and you got the Christy Hemis of the world, and you got the Ashley Massaros of the world, and people like that, but none of them are really sticking. And then this Mickie James comes from out of nowhere, and doing the obsessed fan angle. And then, because I remember it was right around Christmas of before that WrestleMania. I don't know if it was 22 or 23, maybe. I forget the timeline, but it was right around Christmas time where that relationship kind of turned on its head a little bit, and it got a little bit psychotic. And that's when you started realizing, okay, these two are on a collision course. And then, of course, you have the match at WrestleMania, which I believe was in Toronto. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
No, because if it was 22 and 23, 22 was in Detroit. And 23, I don't remember. But it was one of those where, and you had the infamous moment where Mickie comes out of the ring and does that gesture with her fingers and her tongue and all that kind of stuff. And you can't find it on the network anymore, and all that sort of thing. But that's where,
for those of us that were actually watching, we know exactly what we're talking about.
Real ones know what we're talking about. But that's where I started realizing that Trish can elevate somebody to her level too, because Mickey was giving just as good as she was getting in that match. There was no lack of athleticism on either one of their parts. There were no botched moves. There were no, it was just a great match. I mean, I would go so far as to give that one 5 stars if I were rating it. That's one of the matches of the night because the crowd was invested in it. And, Mickey's reaction when she finally won, was part shock, part I told you so. And lest we forget also the changing of the guard match she had with Charlotte at the Evolution pay-per-view, which was a great match. She's been in the Rumble a couple of times, gotten a chance to go up against some of the stars of today. I mean, that's just a small sampling of some of the rivalry she's been involved in. And when she got away from rivalry centered around the affections of a man, and it got to just who's better in the ring? Is it me or is it Lita? Who's better in the ring? Is it me or is it Mickie James? Who's better in the ring? Is it me or is it Victoria? That's when she was at her best, I think.
I gotta agree with you on that. I was really happy that she finally transitioned and was just able to show the natural ability, that she had and her athleticism. And it turned out to be great. I thought, I kept saying to myself, you need to transition her, you need to transition her. And they just didn't do it for a long period of time. That match against Mickie James, when she made her look fantastic. And I think they both made each other during that match, not just Trish putting her over. And I think it was fantastic.
I mean, it's unfortunate because if you look at her Wikipedia write-up, the first 3 paragraphs of her wrestling career, it's all centered around, a guy being kind of the linchpin of it all. The thing with Test and Albert, the thing with Christian and Chris Jericho, and Tyson Tomko comes in later on, and it's just like, do we need to have a man be the axis upon which this story turns, or can we just let these women go in the ring and not have to have all the artifice going on with it? But I guess it was just the times and the way it was. We move on from there. Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I just keep saying to myself that, we have to sit here and get out of the mindset of this is the way it's always been. We just talked about, what happened with the tag divisions and individual, not being able to go on his own, but then have your goon squad jump in. And we still haven't gotten to the point where it's just, well, that's the way we've always done it. That's the way it's going to be. And that's the direction we're going to go. Instead, you're getting more athletic women now, and they're showing how good of athletes that they are and that they can go. You're getting a Bianca Belair who can sit here and you can just tell who is automatically, a natural gifted athlete. You see all these other women that are out here that can go, even though that person like Tessa Blanchard right now no one's going to touch, within 5 miles.
I mean, looking around at the landscape of wrestling right now, come to think of it, any women's wrestler you can name, more often than not, they're making a name on their own merits. They're not accompanying a guy to the ring. The only exception the past couple of years I can think of is Carmella, because she had James Ellsworth as kind of her heat magnet. But I mean, look at the horsewomen: Becky, Sasha, Bayley, Charlotte. Not a guy for 50 miles, and that's probably just the way they like it. Thank you very much. Shayna Baszler, Ronda Rousey. I mean, yeah, Ronda's husband was along for the ride a couple of times, but that's fine. That's different. Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, Dakota Kai, and so on and so forth are all, and the women of AEW also, Thunder Rosa, Britt Baker. I mean, Britt Baker's got a squad, but they're girls. We're making a name for ourselves based on what we can do on the microphone, what we can do in the ring when the bell rings. And that's actually a breath of fresh air. I mean, in Japan, they've got their Joshi promotions where it's all women and they're just doing their thing.
You know, it's about time that we get that they become mainstream. And the fact that, you know, it took, you know, WrestleMania 30, you know, but with it being, you know, for the title for Becky and I'm sorry, not WrestleMania 30, but
32 with the
yeah,
women's triple threat.
thank you. I'm sorry. That it took that long for them to feature women as the main event. You know, yes, last year it was Sasha versus Bianca Belair, but still, we gotta update ourselves here.
Yeah.
You know, and stop going by the old guard as it was back. Oh well, this is what we've always done. This is the way it works, and
Yeah.
if we don't fix it, we have to switch some things up. That's
We'll
all.
move on now to the only bone I have to pick, really, with Trish Stratus. When I was, writing all these categories down, spoiler alert, boys and girls, I gave her a yes in 5 out of the 6 categories. The only category where I said no, she's not one of the greatest of all time. And I feel like it's the one category that we ding a lot of these people for, is the mic skills. You can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I remember Trish more for one-liners than I do for I'm going to climb in the ring and give a cohesive promo that goes on for 3 minutes, or a backstage interview that goes on for 3 minutes, like people like Austin could do, and The Rock, and Triple H, and
CM Punk.
CM Punk, Edge, people like that. And the one-liners that I remember, because of how often I would watch this era of wrestling, it was the one-liners from the Stephanie Trish angle, because they had those promo packages about, the bubble baths and the backstage, the midnight rendezvous and all this kind of stuff. And I even remember when Steph caught her in the dressing room with Triple H, and Triple H was teaching her how to do a hammerlock and stuff like that. And of course, she comes in and it's not the best position to find your husband in with another woman. But it wasn't Trish driving the mic work. It was just a couple lines here and there, and Stephanie would be driving it, or Lita would be driving it, or Victoria would be driving it. Because Victoria was a lot better on the mic than we give her credit for. Don't forget.
Agree.
Yeah.
Let me jump in real quick. When it comes to mic skills, there are a few women that are fantastic on the mic, and some that are getting a lot better. Now, this era, Sasha, Becky, I should say the Four Horsewomen, Sasha, Bailey, Becky, and who's the fourth? Can't think of it right now. Doesn't matter. But
Charlotte.
They're all Charlotte. All fantastic on the mic right now and on the stick, and amazing. And I haven't seen that many people, besides them, that are that good other than AJ Lee when she did her own version of, of just ripping the entire Divas division apart, and no one being as good as AJ in that era. The Bellas were, you didn't have that many.
That could be a discussion all in its own. Is women, part of it. I'll come out and say it. It kind of goes along with what you were saying before. Part of it is they're just not given enough time to be better on the microphone. Where a guy like AJ Styles, for example, can go out and get 5 minutes. Somebody like Carmella is lucky if she gets 90 seconds. And then it's okay, we got to move it along. And that's another reason where equity has to be found. If you're going to give, AEW, for example, if you're going to give Hangman Adam Page 2 minutes on the microphone, you best be giving Anna Jay 2 minutes on the microphone too, so that she can get better. so she's not having to do it on a show like Being the Elite or a show like, if she doesn't have to get on Sammy Guevara's blog or vlog or something like that.
I agree.
If you're not given the chance to get better, it's not a skill that's ever going to develop.
I completely agree. I mean, I get why Rock gets 15 to 20 minutes every time he comes out, but at the same time, you got to sit here and at the same time give somebody else the chance and the opportunity to develop. And if you don't, then you're just weakening the division, the women's division, which that's what they're doing, and that's a sad thing. But
So that's really the only negative that I can find here. I move on now to championships one. Did you know, fun fact, that Trish Stratus, one of her Divas women's championship reigns lasted 448 days. From 2005 till 2006, when Mickie James beat her, she had the title for 448 days, a year and a half, pretty much. Now, to be fair, she did miss part of that with a broken wrist, but the broken wrist healed to where she didn't have to relinquish the championship. I forgot all about that. I mean, the fact that I knew she had a lot of title reigns because, she was, giving it and getting it and giving it and getting it, that kind of thing. But to be on top for that long is pretty staggering.
wow, that's a full year plus.
Yep.
Wow.
And she's, to my knowledge, the only, or maybe one of only two female hardcore champions. She pinned. Who did she pin? I think she pinned Crash Holly.
Everyone pinned Crash Holly,
Yeah.
too.
Right. And then, at a SmackDown taping, she got knocked out by somebody in hardcore. Harley came along and pinned her for the championship or something like that. Because I was watching an old Quizlemania episode that Parts Unknown. The guys that are over in England, they do their trivia show, and the survival category, kind of like what we model our trivia on, was hardcore champions. And somebody said Trish Stratus, and Adam Blampier said, surprisingly, yes, she was a hardcore champion for one day. So, championships one obviously is a big time yes.
Absolutely.
Moving on from there to overall health, as previously stated, she's missed time from injuries, but by and large, she recovers pretty well. It's well known that she keeps herself in very good shape. She used to run a yoga studio in Canada. She's been she's very big on physical fitness. She takes really good care of herself, and even though she has missed time with injury, she's come back in pretty short order.
When it comes to fitness, let's just not even sit here and even debate it. She's been in phenomenal shape her entire career, without question. And, she keeps herself in tip-top shape. When she came back to face Charlotte, after being out, after her retirement, you're like, wow, really? Seriously? She looks that good?
Yeah.
And that's all I need to say about that. She, phenomenal shape her entire career. Staying power, yes. And the way that she's just not, making herself look good, but also putting other people over at the same time. And I think that's fantastic.
I will defer to you on the intangibles before I give you my thoughts on her intangibles. What do you say about the it factor that she has about putting it all together?
The it factor, when you sit there and you think about, does she have it? I think of when you think of somebody that walks into a room and that they're there. Sometimes you can go in and sometimes people are just, oh, I'm here. But then, you see her, oh, snap, it's her. You know, that's Trish Stratus. You know, when you walk in and you see, you know, whether she comes in and she's very humble or she comes in and she's on 20, you know Trish Stratus is there. And you have to sit there and be like, yo, you know, that tangible, they walk into the room and it's, you know, you're like, wow, okay. The whole dynamic of this room just changed because they walked into the room. I think she has that without question because that's what she does. You know, the intangibles, yeah, I think that she's got a lot of them. You know, but the main thing is that it factor that I'm here. I walk into the room, you know I'm here, whether I'm trying to be, you know, the nicest person in the room or I'm just, you know, just happen to be there because a friend of mine's there. You know that they're here. That's what I think about when it comes to trust.
For me, the biggest component of this is I'm sure there's other examples of this. But for me, Trish Stratus is the first person I can think of who made that transition from just being along for the ride, if you will, to being the center of attention. You know, it's clear that she had to put in a whole lot of work to go from just being a quote unquote valet or a manager for Albert and Test to now I'm a multi-time women's champion. I have the rivalry with Lita. I have the rivalry with Mickie James. I'm an inspiration for all these other women who have said so. And I'm in the WWE Hall of Fame. And I'm still trailblazing and inspiring people. It takes a lot of hard work to go from where she started to where she wound up. And that for me is the biggest intangible of all, is the work ethic. Because I don't think anything was handed to her.
Nothing's been easy for women to get to where they're at, whether they've been in like with the WWE's per se. It's just been you had to go out and you had to take it, and that's just what it is. And they're not giving the opportunities to females as much as they are to the guys, and giving them the chance. And that's the whole thing of give divas a chance. And you know, you didn't see that until you saw like a Paige come out,
Right.
or Becky Lynch, or Charlotte when she showed up, or Sasha Banks. You know, it's just they weren't given the chance and opportunity, and they need to be, and they need to be featured. So
earlier today, in when we were banding about the topics for tonight, even though the Reverend of the Rant couldn't be here, his imprint is still left on the show tonight because he came up with a great discussion topic to kind of tie a bow on all of this. His direct quote is, "There's a lot to cover there with Trish, and my only argument isn't if she's one of the greatest. My argument is if she is the greatest women's wrestler of all time. There aren't that many women that have done more and meant more to women's wrestling than Trish. Does her career top Fabulous Moolah, Sensational Sherry, or Medusa? Trish might very well not have an equal." I want to get your thoughts on that before I give you my thoughts.
I'm gonna say that she has the argument for being the greatest of all time is up there. I don't think she is. I think that Moolah will always be the greatest of all time. Remember, Moolah held that title for 20 plus years. Her, even though Mae Young didn't get as many titles as Moolah, Mae was one of the toughest women, period, in the story. And she's not just women, period. How about just one of the toughest, period? And some people would sit here and say, oh, she was as tough as the dudes. And and there won't be that many arguments about it. I keep saying that different time, different era. If we could have seen Moolah actually go with Trish, it'd be a different story. Then we could have something to say. Not sure if that's gonna, that would have never happened, but what could have been. We never got a chance to see her go with a Medusa. Because Medusa's up there with one of the greatest of all time. Period. End of story. And it just wasn't the bra and panties match. Medusa could go when she could go, and we didn't get a chance to see that. Is she the greatest of all time?
The names that Patrick brought up, my perception of Medusa is colored because I wasn't watching at that point when all of her stuff was going on. I didn't watch a lot in the mid 90s or late 80s, or early 90s when Alundra Blaze was a thing in WWE and all that. And Sherry, I'm always going to remember as more of a manager. I know she was a women's champion. I know she was in the ring, and I know she was instrumental in the development of Shawn Michaels and helped him come up with a lot of the moves that he was doing, when he broke out on his own from Marty Jannetty. And this is the dangerous part of watching Dark Side of the Ring, boys and girls, is that the way you remember people gets turned on its head a little bit. For me, Fabulous Moolah, I now have a hard time separating the behind-the-scenes stuff from the in-the-ring stuff. The babyface in me believes that you should be able to carve out a path where you're not stepping on other people to maintain your spot. I know this business is founded upon people not wanting to lose their spots and always wanting to maintain control and power and stuff like that. And there's always going to be shades of gray in this stuff because you aren't actually there when it happens, so you don't really know who's telling the truth and who's not and stuff like that. But that Fabulous Moolah episode from season 1 of Dark Side of the Ring is pretty dark. We're not here to sugarcoat it. But that doesn't take away from the fact that she was a pioneer, from the fact that she did pave the way for a lot of these other women to come along. I say Trish deserves consideration as as the greatest of all time because there isn't much in the way of a dark underbelly, if you will. There isn't much in the way of controversy surrounding her. There isn't much in the way of questionable, nefarious tactics to get to the top and stay there. It's mostly just what did she do on the, in WWE and what did she do in between the ropes. That's why I'm at least willing to consider her as the greatest of all time when it comes to women. I think when this discussion's all said and done, somebody like Charlotte Flair has a great chance to overtake Trish. I think she's on her way to doing that. And who's to say what somebody like Britt Baker could do when her career is all over? I think Britt's on her way to carving out a great path for herself.
Okay, let me address the last two names that you just said. Britt Baker is carving her way and has found her niche, and let's not sugarcoat Britt Baker right now because she is white hot and she is fire, and there's no denying that in any way, shape, or form. Charlotte, I don't know if it's her doing or if it's just the WWE's doing. It's just that they keep featuring Charlotte. And the fact is that you have all these other people waiting in the wings that, you gotta put over because you have to fight somebody and you have to make them look good. And you're not putting anybody over. It's just Charlotte. And there's only a couple people that can actually face Charlotte right now. A couple of them are out, aka our friend Bailey. And then you're not putting over a young person like a Rhea Ripley and giving her the time to develop as a champion so that she can go, and face Charlotte a couple times and it means something.
Yeah.
And develop a Nikki Cross who's been in the wings forever and finally got her chance. And you take it away in 2 seconds.
I mean, we could sit here and rattle off about a dozen names of people that should be able to step in the ring with Charlotte and have it be compelling and not have it be a squash. And I'll start with Shayna Baszler. I'll start with Nikki ASH and Rhea Ripley. Those are 3 wonderful places to start. Now Charlotte's involved in a feud with Alexa Bliss. I mean, a great thing for me would be to end with Alexa winning the championship, because this version of Alexa as the champion would scare the bejesus out of me. But I wonder if they've got the guts to pull that kind of a trigger. I don't think they do.
I think they're going to pull it.
I mean, I hope they do, because Alexa is most deserving because of, not many people could, have Bray leave, still keep going with that character and make it convincing. Yes, the stuff with Dewdrop and Eva Marie was,
Funny.
crap. But she came out of it and, she's confronting the champ. And it takes a lot of stones to be able to do that and pull it off. And I wonder if that's not where they're headed. So that remains to be seen. As we tie a ribbon on this with Trish Stratus, we'd love to hear your thoughts. You can tweet the show at WrestlingXEgos. You can reach out to all of us individually on Twitter. The socials are coming across the screen right now. Isaac is at I4th. I am at BCrigo15. You can tweet Patrick at RantModon. Don't forget about the Facebook page, Wrestling with Egos. Don't forget about the Google repository, bit.ly/withegos. Isaac, before we ease on up out of here, anything else you would like to add?
Everything else we've really pretty much touch based upon. I'm very interested to see where all the promotions are going in the near future. We'll go into that at a later time and date and to see what happens. I would tell you to go back and check out Dark Side of the Rings, the Plane Ride from Hell. I didn't get to see all of it, but I have heard stories, and we can go into that in the future episode. But
I have to get caught up on that, because none of my streaming packages that I have right now have Vice TV on them. So I'm going to have to, the Hulu that we have, it's only season 1 and 2, which I've already seen already. I have to go back on and see if they've released any of season 3 yet. I know I'm a couple episodes behind on that. But it's compelling to watch because you get to hear the backstories behind all of this stuff, and you come up with a different kind of appreciation for it. So thank you very much for joining us as always. We appreciate your support. We appreciate you consuming the show however you're consuming it. Be kind to each other. Thanks for spreading the word. And until we meet again, for the Big Don, for the Reverend of the Rant, I have been the intellectual saver of the wrestling masses, Brian. And always remember, this is why we love professional wrestling. We'll see y'all next time.